Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're listening to this right now, I need you to do me a quick favor. Just look at the device you're playing this on, look at the chair you're sitting in, maybe just, tap the table in front of you.
Feel solid.
Right, feel solid. Feels totally reliable. Well, I have some bad news and some good news for you. The bad news is that everything you just touched is essentially a lie. But the good news, it's a very convenient lie that keeps you from going completely insane.
That is certainly one way to open the show. We are really just going straight for the existential jugular today.
We have to, because today we're looking at a session that basically takes the entire concept of reality, tosses it in a blender, and just hits the frappe button. We are bending reality into a cosmic pretzel today.
It is definitely a session that sits with you. I mean, it fundamentally changes how you look at a door or a tree or even your own passing thoughts.
Exactly. So we are diving back into the Seth material. Specifically, we are looking at session 305. And for the record, this is from the early sessions, Book 7. It was recorded way back on November 30, 1966.
And just to set the scene for you listening, because the context of this is always pretty wild, we have the author, Jess Roberts. She's in Elmira, New York. It's a Wednesday night. She goes into a trance. Her voice completely drops and changes. Her eyes start snapping open and closed, and she begins channeling this personality known as Seth.
And on this particular night, Seth decided he was completely done with small talk. He wanted to dismantle the physics of our world.
He really did. And before we get totally lost in the psychedelic nature of all this, we should declare clearly up front that this podcast will be distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We aren't telling you what to believe here, but we are absolutely going to give you something totally new to chew on.
Yeah, we are just your tour guides through the library of the strange. So the mission for this deep dive is to unpack Seth's mind-bending explanation of what reality actually is. Spoiler alert, it's not what you think.
Yeah.
We'll look at how we create it, and then we're going to get into this absolutely trippy nature of infinity.
It's the kind of topic that sounds like pure abstract philosophy until you realize he's actually talking about your living room. He's basically saying that the physical world is just clothing. It's a costume that a deeper inner vitality wears.
Clothing over reality. That sounds so poetic. But Seth is being literal here, right?
Yeah.
He starts this session by talking about planes and systems.
He is being very literal.
Yeah.
He opens with this foundational argument that all planes, whether physical, mental, or systems we can't even begin to imagine, are created from inner vitality. That is the absolute bedrock.
Okay.
And here's the paradox that usually catches people off guard. He says other systems are just as real and just as unreal as physical life.
Okay, wait, hold on. I need to stop you there. Just as unreal. That's the kicker for me. Because, I'm looking at my desk right now. If I bang my knee against it, it's going to hurt. I'm going to yell. That pain feels incredibly real.
Yeah.
How can Seth say it's unreal?
Because he's making a hard distinction between reality and validity. The pain you feel is valid. The experience of stubbing your toe is valid. But the structure causing it, that's the illusion. Seth explains that physical objects, doors, walls, your desk, are formed mentally.
Mentally. So not physically.
Right. He says, and this is a quote, "There is an electromagnetic connection within and beneath all systems indeed, but this is only the result of inner mental connections."
So the electricity, the atoms, the physics of it all, that's all downstream.
It's entirely secondary. The primary construction material is mental.
So the physics is just the rule book we agreed to play by.
Exactly. And this leads us directly to one of the most practical and honestly kind of humorous parts of this session, the concept of the root assumption.
I love this term, root assumption. It sounds so academic, but the example he uses is just so mundane. He talks about doors.
Yes, the sheer solidity of a door.
Right. So Seth basically says, doors are solid. This is not a basic truth, you see, but a convenient root assumption.
Let's really break that down. A convenient root assumption. Why is it convenient?
Well, I assume it's convenient because if I didn't assume the door was solid, I'd be constantly confused. Or I'd try to walk through it and look ridiculous.
More than confused, you'd be paralyzed. Think about it. We know from modern physics that atoms are mostly empty space. If you looked at a door with true vision, you wouldn't see a solid barrier. You'd see a swarm of energy fields with massive gaps between them.
Right, just a vibrating cloud.
Now imagine trying to navigate your house if you had to consciously calculate the atomic density of every object you walk toward. Like, is this floor dense enough to hold me?
You'd never get anything done. You'd starve to death just staring at your spoon, wondering if it can hold cereal.
Exactly. So the root assumption is a shortcut for the ego. It's an agreement we make with physical reality. We agree to perceive the swarm of atoms as a solid object so that we can actually function.
Okay, I get that. It's a filter, the survival mechanism. But here's where I have to play the skeptic again. I can sit here intellectually and say, sure, the door is mostly empty space. It's not really solid. But if I run at it...
You're still going to break your nose.
Exactly. Why can't I just walk through it if it's just an assumption? If I know it's a lie, why does the lie still hurt me?
Because that assumption isn't just a passing surface thought. You can't just think your way out of it while you are entirely focused in a physical body. It is a root assumption. It's buried deep in your psyche to keep you anchored in this system.
So we are essentially locked in.
While we are physical, yes. But Seth brings this up in a very specific context where we aren't physical. He talks about projection, what people usually call out-of-body experiences.
Okay, so this is where we get into the ghost story part of the deep dive.
In a way, yeah. Seth says that when you project your consciousness away from the physical body, you are no longer subject to physical laws. You are pure consciousness. You should be able to just float right through a wall.
But I'm guessing people don't.
They don't. Because, he says, you have to dispense with these root assumptions first. If you project out of your body, but you still carry the mental baggage that doors are solid, you will literally find yourself trapped in a room.
That is profound and also kind of hilarious. You're essentially a spirit capable of interdimensional flight, and you're stuck floating there because you're waiting for someone to tune the doorknob.
Precisely. You are trapped not by the wall, but by your strict expectation of the wall. Your mind says that is a barrier, so your experience conforms perfectly to that belief.
So how do you get out? Does Seth give a tutorial for stuck ghosts?
He actually does, and this is where we see how incredibly practical this material is. He says, if you can't get your ego to believe the wall is permeable, you have to trick it. You have to use your imagination as a tool.
The ultimate cheat code.
The cheat code. He says, as convenient aids, you will find yourselves imagining, for example, open windows through which you will seem to travel.
Wait, so you can't walk through the wall? Fine, just hallucinate a window.
Exactly. You imagine a window appears, your ego looks at it and says, oh, look, a window. I know how windows work. And because your ego accepts the symbol of the window, it allows your consciousness to pass through the barrier.
That implies that imagination is an actual functional tool for navigation in these other states. Yeah. It's not just making stuff up. It's literally interface design.
That is a brilliant way to put it. Imagination is the user interface for non-physical reality. Your ego panics at the idea of walking through solid matter. So you use imagination to render an icon, a window, that lets you execute the command.
I love that. We are hacking our own consciousness with mental icons. So we have this world where doors aren't real, but we pretend they are to avoid chaos. But then Seth pivots to something that hits a lot closer to home. He moves from walls to how we build our entire personal world through expectation.
This is really the core of the Seth philosophy, the whole you create your own reality concept. But in session 305, he gets very specific. He says, quote, within your system, expectation indeed forms your own physical environment.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here because this is where people always get tripped up. Does this mean if I just expect a Ferrari to appear in my driveway, it's going to be there? Because my expectations are high, but my driveway is empty.
It's the classic question. And Seth actually addresses this nuance. He makes a really sharp distinction between material wealth and what he calls your inner situation.
Okay, what's the difference there?
He explicitly points out that while we create our reality, material wealth does not equal spiritual status. You can be an absolute master at manipulating the physical camouflage manifesting money all day long, but still be spiritually stagnant.
That's a relief.
Yeah.
Good to know my beat-up sedan isn't a sign of spiritual failure.
Not at all. But he says the true indicator of your inner situation is your personal environment taken as a whole, and specifically how you relate to others.
Interpersonal relationship.
Yeah. The vibe of your home, the people you attract, the conflicts you find yourself locked into, that is the true mirror of your expectations.
That is a deeply chilling responsibility because it's easy to say, oh, I manifested this great parking spot. But it's much harder to look at a strained relationship or a toxic work environment and realize I built this structure with my own expectations.
It absolutely forces you to look at your subconscious beliefs. If you fundamentally expect betrayal, you will subconsciously create an environment where betrayal is inevitable, just to validate your root assumption that people can't be trusted.
You're just fulfilling your own prophecy.
You are. It's not magic. It's resonance. Your environment is just feedback.
So instead of feeling guilty about it, Because guilt is usually the first reaction, right? Like, oh no, I ruined my own life.
Right.
We should just treat it like raw data.
Exactly. Look around your life right now. It's a printout of your beliefs from the last few years. If you don't like the printout, you don't scream at the printer. You go back to the computer and change the code. Change the expectation.
Don't scream at the printer. I need that on a t-shirt. Okay, moving on to the next big chunk of this session. Seth tackles a massive fear that people have when they get into this kind of spiritual material. The fear of basically becoming the Borg.
The collective mind, losing yourself entirely in the cosmic soup.
Yeah. This terrifying idea that the end goal of spirituality is to just merge with the whole, become a drop in the ocean, and forget that I ever existed. Goodbye individuality, hello generic bliss. Seth has a very strong opinion on this, doesn't he?
He is incredibly firm on this. He actually seems to find the idea almost ridiculous. He assures us there is no nirvana where individuality is vanquished.
Thank goodness. I mean, I like being me, most days anyway.
And the logic he uses is beautiful. He describes this symbiotic loop. The whole is aware of all its parts, and the parts are aware of the whole. But here is the crucial point that completely flips the script. The whole actually needs the parts.
Needs them. Like, the universe needs me to be me.
Yes. The whole needs the parts to explore. Think about it. If the whole just absorbed everyone back into a bland soup of oneness, what happens?
Nothing happens. It's just static.
Exactly. The whole would stagnate. The universe is not static. It is vitality that must constantly create new patterns. Every new pattern brings new possibilities.
Stagnation is the real enemy here.
Absolutely. Every time you make a choice or feel a complex emotion, you are adding to the richness of the whole. You aren't just a battery. You're an explorer bringing back maps of entirely new emotional territory.
That reframes the entire purpose of life. It's not a test to see if you're good enough to get to nirvana. It's an expedition. We're out here bumping into fake doors, getting our hearts broken, feeling joy, and the whole is watching and saying, wow, look at that diversity.
He literally says there is no alternative between diversity and nothingness. If you don't have billions of individuals having unique experiences, you just have a blank screen.
Which leads us perfectly into what I think is the most mind-bending part of this whole session. If the universe craves diversity, what does that mean for infinity? Because when I think of infinity, I just think of space going on forever, just endless distance.
A straight line that never stops. But Seth completely redefines it. He says infinity has nothing to do with space or time.
So throw out the ruler and the clock.
He defines infinity as value fulfillment, the state of becoming.
The state of becoming. It sounds beautiful, but what does it actually look like in practice?
It means it's never done. It never ends because it is never completed. Infinity isn't a horizontal distance. It's a vertical deepening of experience. The physical 3D brain cannot really hold this concept. Only the inner self can.
And to help us grasp it, Seth walks us through this visualization, this thought experiment. And honestly, this is the part that gave me the huge aha moment. Let's walk the listener through this projection story step by step.
It is the emotional peak of the session for sure.
So, Seth asks you to imagine projecting your consciousness out of your body. You are pure awareness, and you find yourself beside a tree, but you don't just look at it.
Right, you enter the tree. You merge with it. You aren't a human looking at bark. You are the tree.
Imagine feeling the roots deep in the dark earth. Feeling the sap rising up through the trunk in this slow-motion hydraulic existence. You follow it through the season.
You feel the leaves grow. You feel the deep, silent, vegetative life of winter. It's peaceful, grounded.
But then, Seth says, you get restless.
Because you are vitality. And once you have fully experienced that treeness, you need change. So you leave the tree and immediately enter a bird perched on one of your branches.
Talk about a jarring shift.
Instantaneous. You go from being rooted to being light as air. You feel the frantic heartbeat, the hollow bones, the wind. You fly away, seeing the world from a completely different sensory bandwidth.
And then you fly just a few feet away, and there's a child standing in the grass. And you enter the child.
Now, Seth is very careful here to clarify. He says, you intrude upon the child in no way. You are there within the childlike air.
So it's not possession. You're just a witness.
Exactly. You merge with their consciousness to feel what it is like to be human. You feel the scrape of a knee, the burst of energy, the process of growing old.
And you experience the entire arc of a human life. And then, when that life is done, you move to a lake and become a fish. You cycle through all these diverse forms of existence. Tree, bird, human, fish.
And here's the absolute punchline. This is where time distorts completely. You experience centuries of life, but in physical time, only an hour passed.
Centuries of experience in 1 hour of clock time.
That is his definition of infinity. It's the depth of experience. It's not about how long you live. It's about how deeply you explore. He says, quote, "Infinity is the state of becoming and can never have an end, for it is never completed."
It's just staggering. You can never say, I have done everything, because the universe is constantly creating new things to be.
There is always another perspective to inhabit.
I feel like I need a nap just to process that. But we are pushing forward. Because this concept of creating experience links to another paradox he throws at us. The no place to go paradox.
It's a tricky one. He says, there is no place to go, but then immediately says there are as many places to go as you wish.
So it's both. Explain that.
It goes back to creating your reality. The destination doesn't exist until you create it. The places are illusions. But, he stresses, illusions are quite real. They are the clothing over basic reality.
So basic reality creates this diversity, these illusions, just to know itself.
Exactly. We exist because that which is demands diversity to avoid being nothing.
We are the entertainment system for the universe.
Yeah.
Which brings us to a very loaded word, God.
Yes.
Seth's take on God is definitely not a distant figure on a cloud judging you. He calls it a personal God.
It's incredibly empowering. He says, you are a part of this God. You are made of the exact same stuff.
Like a potter who turns himself into the pot.
Right. And the reason it's personal is because only you can speak to your specific portion of God, because it literally is you. You are the signal and the receiver.
But then, and this is where it gets kind of funny, he introduces the concept of minor gods.
He admits the term minor God is poor, but he uses it as a bridge. These are advanced identities connected to us in other systems.
He's basically saying that ancient mythology, Zeus, Thor, whoever, were just advanced psychological entities.
Exactly. They're entities with deeper value fulfillment who sometimes help us as guides or, mess with us.
But what makes them advanced is their multidimensionality. They can focus on multiple systems simultaneously.
Imagine being aware of yourself as an entity and simultaneously being aware of separate existences as individuals in completely different realities.
Yeah.
All at once.
I can barely text and walk at the same time. Trying to imagine being aware of my past, present, future, and a totally different life in another dimension simultaneously. My brain just crashes.
But that is the expanded self. And Seth hints that we are currently learning to be like these advanced entities. This messy human life is the training ground.
So we are all apprentice gods in training.
Pretty much.
All right, let's summarize this deep dive before we completely float away. We create our own environment. Time is basically an illusion. We are part of a massive God structure, and infinity is about becoming, not ending.
It's a worldview that empowers you, but demands absolute responsibility for the reality you are coding.
And for everyone listening, you really need to read this directly. This was session 305 from the early sessions, book 7 of the Seth material. Huge credit to the publisher, New Awareness Network.
Absolutely. We strongly encourage you to study the Seth material books directly. Visit their bookstore at sethcenter.com/the early sessions. There is really no substitute for the sourced text.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. We talked about that projections story. Being the witness inside the child, like air. So if we are all learning to be advanced entities, and projection is natural, who is the you that is watching right now? If you are currently the tree in someone else's projection, are you the only one in there? Or is some advanced entity hitching a ride, just feeling what it's like to be you right in this exact moment?
That is a spooky thought. Makes you want to put on a better show for whoever is in your head.
Just say hello to the empty room. You never know who's listening. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep your root assumptions flexible, and we'll catch you in the next reality.
Take care, everyone.